Is there any fortune more enduring than a song that keeps earning while you sleep, than a melody that outlasts the hand that wrote it? Paul McCartney is one of the very few artists who proved that was possible. From Yesterday, the most covered pop song ever, to Hey Jude, Let It Be, and Blackbird, his music didn't just top charts, it stitched itself into weddings, farewells, revolutions, and quiet car rides home. His bass lines and piano parts taught generations how to feel. And yes, his legacy lives on both on stage and on the balance sheet. Today his net worth is estimated at $1.2 billion, placing him among the wealthiest recording artists in history. His world is spread across addresses that are practically chapters of modern music. The townhouse on Cavendish Avenue in London, a creative bolt hole during Beatles days. The peaceful Sussex acres where he retreats to the countryside. A Hamptons home on the American coast tied forever to Linda, and a Manhattan perch where the city hums far below. Around those homes swirls the rest of the story. Private jet miles, a serious art collection, and a garage that has known Aston Martins and Rolls Royces. None of it is just accumulation. It's proof that melodies can become monuments. Before the Sussex fields, before the Hamptons porch, before the billion-dollar catalog, there was a barefoot Liverpool kid standing in post-war rubble, holding on to dreams he couldn't yet name. Paul McCartney was born June 18, 1942, in Liverpool, a city still carrying the bruises of bombing raids. The family's world was modest, 20 Forthland Road in Allerton, no luxury. No grand piano, just an upright, a mother who worked herself thin as a nurse, Mary, and a father, Jim, whose jazz ear turned their small rooms into a classroom. Then the floor gave way. In 1956, when Paul was 14, Mary died of breast cancer. He would say later, 1 minute she was there. The next, she was gone. That shock left an emptiness you can still hear in Let It Be. The mother Mary who comes to him in dreams isn't biblical. It's his mum, returning to steady a shaken boy. Jim filled the silence with music, encouraging Paul to try everything within reach. Music, Paul says simply, saved him. At 15, he met another kid marked by the same wound, John Lennon, whose mother, Julia, would also be taken too soon. Two teenagers on threadbare sofas turned grief into harmonies. Those early songs, scribbled on floors, played on cheap guitars, became the embers of a band that would light the century. Decades later, 20 Forthland Road was preserved by the National Trust. Fans treat it as holy ground. For Paul, it's something quieter and harder, a reminder that his fortune began in loss, not luxury. Fame didn't arrive with fireworks. It began with smoke-filled clubs and hunger. In the late 1950s, Paul, still 16, and John hauled a fledgling band to Hamburg. They slept in grim back rooms, played 8-hour sets until fingers split, and chased energy with cheap stimulants. If they stopped, they were finished. So they didn't stop. Then another blow. In April 1962, their original bassist and close friend Stuart Sutcliffe died from a cerebral hemorrhage at 21. Paul took up the bass reluctantly, stuck at the back, he thought, but turned it into a lead voice, singing through the instrument and changing rock's grammar forever. Out of resentment came invention. Out of loss, a new sound. The catalog that followed is the spine of popular music. Yesterday, Hey Jude, Let It Be, Penny Lane, Blackbird. Abbey Road became Temple, Cavendish Avenue, Fortress. But even miracles carry a bill. When Brian Epstein died in 1967, the band lost its anchor. At 25, Paul found leadership thrust on him. It wasn't a crown. It was a burden. Creative differences hardened. Paul's bright Penny Lane faced John's haunted Strawberry Fields Forever. The genius the world adored began to sound inside the band, like Goodbye, and then the strangest bruise, the 1966 Paul is Dead rumor mill. Imagine being alive while strangers pour over your face on album covers to prove you've been replaced. Years later, he admitted, that kind of public hallucination leaves marks. By September 1969, John said he was out. The public heard it April 10, 1970. The Beatles weren't just a band to Paul. They were my family, he said. Losing them felt like losing himself. He retreated to a Scottish farm. The bottle helped numb the ache. The guitar stayed quiet on his lap. Even the music seemed to have left the room. In 1970, he made McCartney mostly alone. One man, many instruments. A private act of survival disguised as a record. Critics sneered then. Time was kinder. In 1971, he and Linda, his anchor, made Ram. Reviewers called it whimsical. History calls it fearless. Then came Wings with Linda and Denny Lane. Lineups changed, critics circled, and finances got tight. Without Beatles machinery, tours and gear came out of Paul's pocket. And still, he pushed forward. Payoff arrived in 1977. Mull of Kintyre, a love letter to Scotland, sold over 2 million in the UK, becoming Britain's best-selling single to that point, bigger than any Beatles 45 at home. Stadiums filled, accounts recovered, and a second act stood on its own legs. Music became my escape, he'd say later. Those albums weren't just releases. They were lifelines. Amid the noise, there was a quiet miracle. Paul married Linda in 1969. She wasn't there to be impressed. She was there to see the man. They raised Mary, Stella, James, and Heather, whom Paul adopted. She learned keys, took the stage, and ignored the sneers. He never wavered. Her presence was the point. In 1995, at 53, Linda was diagnosed with breast cancer, the same illness that took Mary when Paul was 14. On April 17, 1998, Linda died at 56. He was 55 and suddenly hollow again. "You don't get over it," he said. "You learn to live alongside the emptiness." He carried her passions, photography, vegetarian living, animal rights, into the world as if to keep her voice speaking. Grief didn't break him. It reshaped him. Hope returned with Heather Mills. They married in 2002 when Paul was 60. Their daughter Beatrice arrived in 2003. But this time, love unfolded under a tabloid microscope. By 2006, the fractures were open. By 2008, the divorce was done. The court awarded $24 million. Headlines feasted. Paul looked tired more than angry. Unlike Linda's quiet passing, this grief was loud, messy, and public. And still, he didn't let cynicism win. In the late 2000s, he met Nancy Shevell. No spectacle. No hurricane. Just steadiness. They married in 2011 when he was 69. Friends noticed the softening right away. He called her a pillar of strength and balance. After a life in surround sound, he finally found a room where he could exhale. Fame brings temptations, and he's frank about it. Stimulants greased the hamburger grind around 1960. In 1964, a hotel hang with Bob Dylan opened another door. There were arrests, Sweden, Scotland, Barbados, but January 1980 in Japan was the hardest. 9 days in a cell on a possession charge and a tour gone before it began. It wasn't rebellion, he said, so much as trying to stay upright in a hurricane. In 2015, at 73, he stepped away from recreational substances for the grandkids and for clarity. That wasn't defeat, that was a win. By 2025, at 83, he's not just the richest working musician, $1.2 billion. He's a case study in how art becomes equity. The homes are chapters. Cavendish Avenue steps from Abbey Road. High Park Farm in Scotland, where he rebuilt after 1970. Blossom Wood in Sussex, where a pine from George Harrison still stands. Paul talks to it sometimes. The Hamptons house he kept for Linda's memory. A Beverly Hills refuge. A Manhattan penthouse he sold at a loss when he decided views can't replace warmth. The cars are a timeline more than trophies. Rolls-Royce Phantoms, an Aston Martin DB5, Jaguars, Bentleys. But the true crown jewels are instruments. The Hövner bass that sang through Yesterday, and Hey Jude, the guitars polished by decades of fingerprints. They're not luxuries. They're witnesses. He still tours. In 2024, the Got Back shows packed arenas with 3 generations singing. As of August 4th, 2025, a new studio album is finished. Another chapter added when most would be writing epilogues. Philanthropy. He's quietly given over $100 million to causes that echo Linda's and his own convictions. Environmental work, animal welfare, disaster relief, music education. He's never published a will, but most expect a balance between family and the missions he's backed for years. These days, he splits time between London, Sussex, and the Hamptons. With Nancy Sheville, life is ordinary in the best way. Garden walks, simple dinners, private laughter. He keeps fit with a plant-forward diet, yoga, and long walks. The lines on his face are not decline. They're hieroglyphs of a life fully spent. The ghosts are part of the room. Mary, Linda, John, George. There are nights I still reach for memories that feel like smoke, he admitted in 2023. That doesn't diminish him. It deepens him. Greatness isn't the absence of grief. It's how you carry it, and that may be Paul McCartney's truest wealth. Not the private jet, not the $1.2 billion, not even the unmatched catalog. It's the way he rose again and again, from 20 Forthland Road to Hamburg, from the breakup in 1970 to Mull of Kintyre in 1977, from 1998's loss to 2011's peace, and turned private sorrow into songs that make strangers feel less alone. If his music ever steadied you, if Hey Jude lifted your chin, if Let It Be eased a hard night, if Blackbird reminded you to try again, leave a small thank you. Because his legacy isn't only the records that still pay while he sleeps. It's the comfort those records still give when we can't.